All right, welcome back. This is podcast section 2 on setups with Michael Rigney on Loop Community. And we're going to be putting together the course. You can find that link in the description of this podcast. But today, we're specifically going to go over setups for when you're ready to start running tracks. So if you missed podcast section 1, then check it out because we talk all about every reason you should and all the drawbacks and what is it called? Upbacks, drawbacks, the upside and downside of using tracks. So thanks, Mike, for coming in. Mike's our music director, and he's the man of tracks. So Mike's going to share in this podcast episode a little bit about his first origin story of tracks. And it's going to help you because if you're a small church or you don't have a big budget, this is it. This is how you can do it. You can make it happen with a few $100 with the equipment that you have. So we're gonna hack the in-ear system for you, make it super simple, and it's gonna help because you have to have in-ears to do tracks. And let's say you're a small church with an analog board, you're a worship leader, and you're thinking, okay, I got to run tracks. How am I going to do this? So Mike, why don't you just tell us the beginning story? You were in a small church and you went to start running tracks. And let's pretend your board was analog to begin with, and you have no money.
Yeah. So we started our church maybe on the best day we've ever had 100 people. So we're a small church, didn't have a lot of money. And then so we wanted, our problem is we had wedges all over the stages. And so our sound in the sanctuary was horrible because the wedges were louder than the mains. It was just a big roar. So we were trying to figure out how to get that under control, and then also just to be better as a band. So we implemented tracks. We started tracks, had to push for it. But the cheapest what we did, we bought these little Rolls headphone amps. At the time, they're like $40, so they've gone up. They're like $70 a piece now. But we just bought 4 headphone amps and ran those out on an aux channel. So who was ever running your board, you tell the sound guy, hey, I want tracks, click, guitar in my ears, and that's it. And maybe a vocal, and they would do it. So like where we're at now today, we have the P16s, we can all mix that ourselves. But the cheapest way we did, so you got to have an iPad, and then an auxiliary cable to XLR, and then these Rolls headphone amps, and that's, for like $200, which were already the iPad, because it was my iPad.
Okay, so you steal an iPad from Mike or whoever you got, and these PM50s is what I think what you had. They're Rolls. Basically, if you have an analog console and it has like 4 aux outs, you can run 4 separate monitor mixes. Yep.
Or you can also daisy chain them all together so everybody has the same mix.
Even easier.
And I think that's what we started was, we didn't have all these auxes, so we just, it wasn't the ideal situation, but it worked.
Okay.
So everybody had the same mix. So we all had to agree, like, guitar's too loud, turn it down.
Okay.
So that with that way too, you could just pull an ear out and hear yourself. But
yeah, so basically you take an aux out up to the stage into these little Rolls PM50s, and let's say you have 4 band members, so you buy 4 of these. They're $70 a piece, and each one of those band members can basically plug their in-ear monitor and their headphones into these little personal hotspots, basically, and they can turn on their mix. And the sound guy mixes your aux. Just puts a little bit of the track, a little bit of the guide, a little bit of this and that, and that would be like the most cheap, like quick, easy, under a couple $100 to get in-ears on stage. And I've done something like that. It's obviously just the same way you would run an aux to your monitor wedge, and you'd have like, I want more vocal or I want more guitar, and they would just run that to the floor wedge. Now you're just basically replacing those floor wedges with these little PM50 Rolls headphone amps. You could even at that point, I'm thinking of this now. You could even get one of those little like multi like eight input monitor amps that studios use. They got 1 input and then like 8 headphones come out of them.
Yep.
And that each person could just plug into there and you just wire them up. And we're talking bare bones. We're talking you're broke. Your pastor's not giving you any money, and you want to try to run in tracks. So you come out of the aux of your iPad and into a channel. You come out of the auxiliary mix of your mixer into these little headphone amps, and that's a small church way to run in-ears.
And another thing too, if you can't afford a iPad, you can use your phone. If you have an Apple phone, It's the same thing. It runs the exact same off your iPhone.
Or any MacBook Pro or MacBook
Yep.
Air.
Any Apple product,
any
yeah.
MacBook Mac will run the Loop Community Loop tracks, and then you can run these aux-fed wireless mixes. Now let's go up a level. So that's your first level. That's like you're totally broke. Nobody's going to put a lot of money behind this, and that you want to try to get to that next level. That'd be an easy way to do it. And let's say you have a digital console though. Let's say you're still kind of broke, but somewhere along the way you got a digital console given to you. I'm going to lay out a path to doing that. Let's say we have the Behringer X32, which is like every church in America has that now. And I've been at churches that didn't have a lot of money, but they still had a digital console. Somewhere the money came in and they bought the console, but they didn't buy the P16 or the Aviom units, and those are expensive. Back when I bought my first Aviom setup, it was like $6,000. So just telling the pastor like I need $6,000, and luckily they were big enough churches to go, okay,
just for headphones.
Just for headphones, yeah, right. They're like, well, we already have a $20,000 digital mixer, which back then is what the Yamaha mixers were costing. Even the small ones, they were like $18,000. So it was a different era back in like the 2000s. But now let's say you have the Behringer X32 and you don't have the hearback system, or you don't have the I put hearback on there. I don't even think people are into those anymore, but that is a system. It's cheap. You can get it on eBay. It's an eight channel fed through the Cat 5. It's called hearback, and I'm not sure that they sell them new anymore, but they're good systems. Aviom's a system too that doesn't. I would say Aviom. Have you heard anything about them? People still use them, but I'm not sure they're as popular as they used to be, because we use the Behringer P16. But let's say you have your Behringer mixer, but you want to run in-ears, but you don't have the P16s. You can still run auxes out of the Behringer. And in fact, I think it might have let's say it has 8 auxes. You could run 8 individual headphone amps up to stage, okay? And then with this setup now, you can use the phone app, and each band member could individually have their own mix.
Yep.
That'd be the cheapest way to do it.
Yeah, cheapest. And I was thinking too, like if you can't even like we use the Scarlett 414 for our outs, but for a long time we didn't have that, so I had my interface. I didn't even have an interface, so I used the headphone jack on my Mac when I would run tracks that way too.
On your Mac, yeah. So yeah, that just run it right out of the headphone jack.
Yeah.
And so now you went to step up to the Scarlett for getting your tracks into the system. You just took the Scarlett as an interface, and then you use the outputs on that.
Yeah, it just sound quality was a little bit better.
Yeah. And then and on that same line, right now what we're using is the Scarlett, I think it's called the 414. It's about $159. It runs 4 outputs.
Yeah. So
you have a little bit of control. You can actually run 4 stems out. So you can run how do you have them run?
So we do it like our click and cues come out of input 1, and then input 2 is all our guitars. So usually we have 2 acoustic players every week. So I usually, on the tracks, there's always acoustic guitars. We usually keep those. I only turn those up to 20%, because that's what's cool in the app is you have your own faders. So you can turn 100% or turn them all the way off. And so usually I don't run acoustics through channel 2. With electrics, just straight electric. Just so our sound person has complete control of the electrics. And then input 3, we run any keys, synthesizers, strings, all that stuff. And then input 4 is all our low end stuff. Or so we mix our low end like a synth bass, or if I don't have a bass player that week, we'll run the bass track through there. Which at my old church we ran drums through track 4. Well, we didn't have a drummer, but here we don't have that problem. And then I'll run shaker, tambourine. What else is there? Any kind of percussion.
What about background vocals or something?
We don't use those, but sometimes once in a while I might have them in there just a touch, 20%, and we'll run those with the guitar tracks.
On the guitars.
Yeah, on the guitar channel. But any percussive instruments, any drum loops, any of that stuff, any which I know shaker and tambourine, all that stuff isn't low end, but that all comes through our low end channel on track 4.
Yeah, so you've got, and we're gonna show all this in great detail in the app inside the course that we're putting together. But you'll have He has 4 outs. So that's important because if you're just using headphone jack or if you're just using the 2-track Scarlett, you only have clicks and guides on one track and then everything else on the other.
On the other, yep.
So you're basically pre-mixing, and your front of house engineer only gets 1 track. Like that's it, up or down.
And it's not like amazing, but it works. Like it's better than nothing. You can tell the difference if you only have 2 channels and that 1 channel is just all tracks, and you got the band playing, turn that channel off, and you'll see the difference it makes.
Yeah, it's just a matter of if you want to have more control, and even for you, having 4 outs gives you a way to break it up to make sense. If you have no guitar player, the front of house engineer can pop the guitar up a little bit right there, or they can turn it down or whatever. But you're kind of doing that as the music director. You're kind of doing that. You're kind of like, okay, I know what we have on stage today, so I'm going to make adjustments to these instruments.
Yep.
And that's good.
And we're blessed here. We have really good sound people, so they understand too.
Yeah.
They know how to mix it right.
Yeah. So the idea is if you want a really simple layout, you would just take your iPad or your computer,
or even
use a
iPhone.
headphone jack or your iPhone. That would be even easier, cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
Right, headphone jack right out. If you want to step it up, you get a Scarlett 2-channel, which is $99. I would say if you're going that route, just go up to the 159, the 4i4, which gives you 4 outputs, and then you can do it. And then the last thing you could do, I mean, if you have a little more money, let's talk about that. Let's talk about, we have a little bit of money to spend, and maybe I'll add up the money here. Let's say you already have the X32, so that's not a problem. You're not going to have to spend money on that. But you definitely need the P16 mixers or Aviom. And I don't know how much those are. Do you know how much those are? We'll look those up. But let's say the P16 mixers, actually I think they cost $299 a piece. So let's say you buy 4 of those, 5 of those, you're at $1,500 or something. So your P16 mixers are XLR driven or Cat5 driven network. They hook up to your X32, and then every band member gets their own mix. So they're really easy. I'm kind of torn between using that and using the app, because the app is in your hand and it's more, you can do more with the app. It's called, we use MixStation. It's an iPhone app, so you can actually do more with it, but it's harder to connect it, and everybody on the band has to use it. The P16 mixers are sitting on stage, you plug into them and they work.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of ease with those. But you're talking maybe $1,500 for your monitors, or you can use your X32 app, and then you want your 4i4. That's $159. Oh, wait a minute, I'm pretending we have a lot of money. Let's go with the track rig then. Track rig. We didn't talk about the track rig yet, but $500. The track rig is an 8 output. It works with an iPad or any Apple device like an iMac computer, and it will allow you to send 8 outputs to the mixer from your track rig, from your tracks.
It's strictly, and Loop Community built that, so it's built for the app.
I think it's a good price. I mean, for $499, that's a pretty good deal.
For 8 outputs. And the thing we didn't say either is you don't have to use the Scarlett. Scarlett works best with Macs. Like, you never have any issues with that. You can use any interface you want. You can use a super cheap one, $20 interface, whatever. It still works as long as you can get your computer or iPad to read it.
Yeah, I bought a couple from China for real cheap, and they didn't work as good. But any interface would work with an output section.
Yeah.
I do like the Scarletts. They seem to be real plug and play. They're pretty
especially
easy.
for Macs. Yeah.
But any USB interface that will work with your Mac that has certain outputs inside Loop Community's app, you can tell it which output to go, and we're going to go over that. So if you bought your track rig for $500, what that really does is give your director, your track guy, the ability to send 8 separate tracks. But think about this. Is this a good thing or a bad thing? I mean, depends on how much control you want. You're sending 4 stems, but imagine if you sent all 8 back to front of house.
Yeah, it would be, you just have so much more control over everything. Like, we have just the 4, we have good control, but I would love to have 8 where I could send, like, guitars are all on one. Keys are all on one, and then synthesizers are all on one. Strings are all on one. All my tambourines, all my percussion on one, and then all my low end on one. You could really, really make the mix even better.
Yeah, it would be a lot better. The reason we had a friction with that is because our board is almost all taken up. I think we have, 32 channels, and I don't know how, or 6. How many do we have?
Like, available, like 2.
Yeah, how do we use so many channels? I don't know.
Well, the drums are, like 10
Yeah.
channels just right there just for the drums.
Yeah, we've got a lot of drums, and we have 2 guitars, 2 acoustics, 2 electrics, 2 bass, keyboard. So ours is, if you had 8 right now, you couldn't even use them.
No.
But so you got to think about that. How many channels do you have? How many guys you have on stage, and what makes sense? But if you want to send out, the Track Rig is your 8-channel option. The 4i4 by Scarlett is your 4-channel option, and then the 2i2 is a basic just 2 channels. That's your minimum option unless you're going with the headphone jack.
And for, like I said, for smaller churches, that's what I used for years, was the 2-1-2, and it worked just fine.
Yeah, so I think if you're going to pull out a full inner pack for the P16s, maybe $1,500, the Track Rig another $5, you're about $2,000 at that point, and you got cabling and everything. I would probably say you're going to want $3,000 if you're going to go full out, running monitors and Track Rig and maybe an iPad and cabling. Cabling is an issue because you got to have a lot of cables to run 8 out. You got to just.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like cabling would cost that much until you need like 16 XLR cables and all that, and then it kind of adds up. So probably $2,500 to $3,000. That's if you're just sitting there with no in-ear system and you're ready to switch over, and you have a digital console already. But I think with any of this stuff, I've always been into like mixing and stuff. I just scrap stuff together like you did. I would just be like, what do we got? Put this together. Just know all your options. I think part of the big takeaway of this episode today is there are options on any console, even if it's just an old Mackie mixer with 2 auxes, that you could run in-ears to your band like you did. And then if you step up, there's even options in that X32. If you don't even need the P16, if you just wanted to let everybody use the app, MixStation phone app, to mix their in-ears. You don't need to spend that much money to do this, I guess, is the big takeaway. And when we put together the course today, or when we finish putting it together this week and it's out, check the link in the description of the video, because we're putting together a course where I'm going to give diagrams for every one of these setups, like the low, cheap budget setup, the mid-grade setup, and then the full high setup if you've got a lot of money. That way, if you're working with your pastor and you're like, hey, I need to get this equipment, like, how do you convince them that you need $4,000? You're going to have a lot more to go with. You'll even have all the pieces, where you're going to buy them. And I make these pretty cool diagrams so you can see, this is how it's going to hook up my mixer, my in-ears. Like, all of these are systems, and they all have to work together, right? And so you're going to have to be, number one, convince your pastor or whoever to spend the $4,000 or $5,000 if you're going to move into tracks like that, or you're just going to have to take what you have, your $1,000 budget or $500 budget or $200 budget, and make it work. But I think you can make it work with that budget. So do you have anything else about this? Just somebody looking at their equipment going, I need to get tracks working, and I need to get some type of in-ears working. You got anything else?
No, I think we covered it. It's like, you could do it. So we did it super cheap and it worked. It wasn't ideal. Yeah.
But it came. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, you can scrap it together. That's the point. So while you're scrapping it together, make sure you check the link in the description of this podcast or in this video if you're on YouTube, because the course is out. It's with Michael Rigney, and it's worshiptheking.com. You can go there and get the whole course on Loop Community, how to set it up, how to make it work, I'm going to cover everything. I'm even going to show you how to run a room mic and make the in-ears sound super good. That's one thing that I'm going to contribute in this. And Mike's going to walk you through everything, how to set up transitions in songs, how to loop songs together, how to be a music. No, we're not really going to focus completely on how to be the music director, but running the tracks and getting them all together, making the service run smoothly. It's all in there. So if you're new at this, It does seem a little overwhelming if you're new at this, I would say, because I don't run tracks. I mostly just play the guitar. So even looking at all this, I'm all good with the tech stuff, but then when you start getting into the programs, it's like, oh. So Mike's going to run us through all that in this course. Check it out in the link in the description at worshiptheking.com.